Bueno, la pregunta... No, tranquilos, no os la voy a hacer a vosotros. Chicas, mis musas, ¿vamos a por la última mesa? ¡Sí! ¡Y mira, se me ha oído! Oye, le has puesto buena voz, Javier. Está muy bien. Mañana decidimos quién es quién. Si Sonia es Irene o Sonia es Vique, depende del rato, ¿no? Vamos a ver. Bueno, gracias. Mira, mira, con corazón y todo. Qué maravilla. Es que qué despliegue tecnológico. Última mesa. Poquitos, insisto, pero tenemos que dar todo el amor del mundo. Está súper bien hilada, como no, con el cuadro Tightrope Walker, que tengo que leer el nombre de él. Sonia, dime, tú que eres de francés. Jean-Louis Forain, ¿es el artista? Mira, le cuca a Javier y dice, sí, tú di que oui. Claro, es que es un cuadro parisino que además este hombre, según ves tú, ¿lo veis al fondo? ¿Lo tapo? Que te veo asomándote. Digo, a ver si te tapo. Claro, tú ves aquí esta mujer haciendo el equilibrio y debajo hay parisinos elegantes, pero que me choca lo de que sean parisinos elegantes viendo a ver si se cae o no se cae. ¿No os parece un poco contradictorio? Es un poco ese equilibrio. Lo que pasa es que si alguien puede ser elegante en esta vida es un francés. Porque no es lo mismo decir, uy, que se cae, o en mi pueblo de, ¿dónde vas? Que decir de repente en francés, uy, puede que se caiga. Es que es suavidad. O sea, es que esa manera de hablar es una dulzura. En cualquier caso, para equilibrios, a los que os tenéis que enfrentar vosotros, que hasta yo me puedo hacer cargo de dónde alcanza la dimensión, entre los temas de energéticas y el tema ESG. Uy, que ahí es una barrita súper delicada. Comportémonos como parisinos elegantes, viendo a ver cómo se maneja el equilibrio, de la mano de la última, pero bien avenida mesa, con Javier de Carvajal, socio de Herbert Smith Freehills, al frente de todo el equipo. No, hasta que no te aplaudan, Javier no puede salir. Fuerte. Ahora sí, esa es la energía, Javier. Qué bajo.
Buenas noches. Brief introduction in Spanish. No sé si lo sabéis, pero aparte de la hora, esto va a ser en inglés. Porque la parisina elegante, que es mi compañera Laurence, ha venido expresamente desde Francia, entonces le hemos querido dar un toque un poco internacional. Y como lamentablemente Laurence es muy buena en muchas cosas, pero español todavía no, we're going to switch to English, okay? So we have Laurence with us, that she has very kindly accepted the invitation that I called her to come. Laurence, thank you very much. We have Dorleta, Vicente. If you don't know her, she's the head of legal of Ecoembes. Obviously, talking about ESG, she is a must in this roundtable. We get along very well. And this is our second roundtable talking about ESG arbitration, so it should be easier for us. And last but not least, Juan Francisco Nasser. Juan Francisco works he's a partner at HKA Forensics. Obviously, we wanted to have different profiles in this roundtable. So external counsel, energy company or ESG company, outside counsel, our partner from the Paris office, international perspective, Juan Fran from forensic economic perspective. As the presentation said, thanks to Juan Fran, we selected this paintwork. Somewhere below the lady making a balance is Laurence over there. But yeah, we selected, Juan Fran suggested that this painting would be a good one because of the difficulties and challenges we have in our day-to-day when trying to put on balance ESG, the day-to-day of a business, when the disputes arises, arbitration, etc., etc. So we thought that this painting was a very good example of what we face on a day-to-day in relation to energy and also energy arbitrations. And we thought about talking about ESG and energy arbitrations and the trends associated to this theme, because we knew that last week there was going to be an energy blackout,
Yeah.
for sure. So I think, and everything related to supply chain, energy transition, and all these very interesting items are some of the ones that we think are very important challenges that businesses that have energy items and ESG items face in a day-to-day basis. And basically that's what we are going to talk about today. Conscious of time, conscious of 8 p.m. nearly, we are going to try to keep a KISS format, keep it short and simple. That's the way I like it. So we've selected some items, some questions, some points of discussion. The first one will be addressed by Dorleta. And the first one is, Dorleta, you as an in-house in a company, what challenges do you think companies are facing when complying with sustainability obligations, and how these are reflected in arbitration?
Well, first of all, thank you, Javier, and thank you, Javier and Sonia, for having me in this roundtable. And a special thank you to all of you who have stayed, which is really nice for us to be here. So, like Javier said, I'll try to keep it simple and short, because we have little time. And it's not a big surprise if I tell you that ESG ratings and disclosure and reporting requirements are on the rise globally. So for over a decade now, the OECD, the UN, and others have been recommending in their soft law guidance that companies influence suppliers through contractual arrangements to maintain and improve sustainability and responsible business conduct in their relationships, so like in their value chain. This is not only soft law compliance, but also in the UE, right now a hard law requirement through the CS3D and CSRD directives, which are now on hold because of the omnibus package, which is still under discussion. But there is like this sense in all companies that ESG matters matter every time more and more. And making these ESG matters work, the easiest way is through contractual clauses, including an ESG contractual clause in an agreement may lead or has to lead or will lead to disputes. This is how things work. I mean, what would we do, lawyers, if there were no disputes? We have to agree. So as these issues are quite new for all of us, there are no model clauses for ESG matters. And not all clauses are as fully and as well detailed as others. So what challenges may rise from these ESG clauses and for companies? First of all, the best or the first potential issue that we have is the interpretation of the clause. Like I said, this is quite a new matter for all of us. So how to interpret what we have said in this clause and what concrete action is required to comply in a specific case will lead to disputes and to litigation or arbitration for sure. And this is quite important because what will be interpreted as a material breach that will lead to a termination, to the right to terminate an agreement through an ESG clause, it's going to be hard. Second, I'm going to be fast. Second, the regulatory proliferation. Like I said, in Europe, we have the Green Deal, with the 3D and the CSRD directives leading the package, but in other countries we also have this regulatory proliferation that may complicate the understanding of the agreement between multilateral or multinational companies. The measurability of the ESG impact, and I have a super expert here, so I'm not gonna just show the problem, no? The lack of standardization and consistency in ESG metrics, and there are large divergences in the rankings, in the different providers, the lack of transparency about the data used to arrive to other rating. This could also cause some litigation. Then the supply chain. I think this is the main problem that we have. You have to ensure, as a company, that all your supply chain comply with your ESG regulations, like the in-house, like the company's compliance regulations and the ESG regulations in the country. This is almost impossible because the supply chain, you can get to the first, even second wave, but all to the chain, that's quite complicated. And then the remedies, that's also something that is gonna be funny to see how it evolves, because traditional remedies are not gonna work for this kind of matters. So ESG matters not necessarily need a compensation, a monetary compensation. They may need an apology from someone. So this is also gonna be funny to see how it evolves. As a conclusion to your question, I guess that our courts are not yet ready to deal with all these matters, which are complex and new, are not really fixed, so they have lots of interpretation issues and etc. And they are leading from contractual clauses in most of these commercial agreements have dispute regulations, arbitral clauses. So I guess that this is gonna lead to quite a few issues next couple of years or so.
So would you say that in practice, when you are drafting your contracts, when you include your ESG clauses, you've said that domestic courts are not yet ready to implement or to resolve these disputes arising. So would you be inclined to include arbitration clauses?
For sure.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think so. It's the only way to guarantee, or at least try to guarantee, that whoever is going to decide about these matters, which are complex, like I said, has a full idea of what they are dealing with. Yeah. Sure.
Laurence, what do you think about that?
Yes. First, I would like to apologize because everybody speaks in English because of me. So I thank you even more than the others to be there that late and listen to last panel in English. So thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me here. I'm very honored, and I will try to speak Spanish next time. Apart from that, I think maybe there are, to me, different challenges. I think that you know that in France, one of the first European countries, I think, that has had this duty of vigilance law was France in 2017. Of course, these cases go, most of them, before courts because they are brought by NGOs, associations, which are basically reproaching to companies not to have complied with their obligation to put in place with their supply chain or subsidiaries a number of monitoring and reporting proceedings. I summarize very quickly, but that's the idea. And therefore, that takes place before courts. That has so far not been interpreted on the merits in France because we have many procedural issues in relation to who has eligibility to bring those claims before court, what court has jurisdiction. So there is a lot of testing who is eligible. There was, for instance, in a case against Total, the municipality of New York, that was part of the different claimants, that was considered as not eligible. That's an example. So that is before courts. But in order to try to prevent these claims to be successful before courts or even to be brought, indeed, you need to incorporate clauses in your agreements. And what I understand, and I'm very happy to hear about that, is that you would say that probably arbitral tribunals would be more keen to better understand how to interpret those new clauses that have so far not been tested or challenged. And just if you are interested in those issues, I think there is one very interesting report that has been prepared by the ESG subcommittee of the IBA, which is from October 2023. And they give a number of examples of these new clauses that you could still already find out in agreement. ESG warranties, ESG due diligence clauses, adoption of the Equator principles, for instance, a loan agreement for certain financial institution, as well monitoring, reporting obligation put in place by company to ensure ESG compliance within supply chain. The difficulty with this interpretation of these laws by arbitrators is that most of the time it will be confidential. So you won't have the outcome of the case. Maybe one interesting example is an ICC case that was partially published. It's Solvay against Edison in 2021. And it was about an SPA. Basically, Solvay entered into an SPA to purchase shares in a subsidiary of Edison, Agora. And this SPA contained an environmental warranty where Edison warranted in the SPA that itself and its subsidiaries are in substantial compliance with applicable environmental laws. An arbitration was initiated by Solvay because Solvay asserted Edison and its subsidiaries contaminated and polluting some areas in Italy and concealed the breach of environmental warranties. The pollution was from the 50s. It was not a pollution that took place just a year before the SPA was signed. So the issue was concerning this information to the buyer and to the public authorities at the time. And just very quickly, the tribunal held that the SPA environmental warranty was breached, so the wording was substantial compliance. And that because the clause obligated it to report accurately, exhaustively, all environmental issues to the authority, that large amounts of information were not submitted to the authorities and disclosed to Solvay, and that the acts, that's because you need to go through the whole line of causality for liability, of course, were attributable to Edison as members of the management that were involved in concealing the information. And there was a high number of millions of dollars awarded to Solvay in that case. That's one example we found. But so, yes, I think many challenges and maybe arbitration will help.
Fully agree.
So would it be fair to say that if ESG obligations are now impacting how businesses work daily, and they're including more ESG commitments in their contracts and clauses, etc., would you agree with me that this will help arbitration to be more common in all commercial contracts?
Maybe.
Hopefully.
Hopefully, if arbitrators are providing interpretation, I don't know what we should say, whether it should be a balanced interpretation, taking into account at the same time the business needs, but also the needs of these corporate responsibilities that are very crucial for the people in general. So that could become an ethical question, you know?
It's an interesting remark, because would we say that then arbitrators need to have ESG intelligence when they are deciding arbitrations, not only legal intelligence and legal knowledge? Do they have to I would say, implement their know-how when they are taking into account.
At least they have to have the sensibility of this kind of matters. I mean, it's not like I bought this glass and it's broken, you have to give it back to me. I mean, environmental matters are super complex, and getting to the point of if there has been or not a breach of these clauses, or the ESG compiles that have to fulfill all these companies. I mean, environmental matters are very complex. The social matters are very complex, and that is where I say that maybe our courts are not yet there. I mean, you go to a court and say, well, I don't know, he lied because he doesn't have this program for all people, whatever. And you're like, what? I mean, yeah. But this is very important for companies. The reputation of the companies are damaged by these kind of things. I mean, it's really crucial for us. So I guess the arbitrators have like this better feeling of what companies have in their heads and their minds when they make a decision. I hope at least.
Perfect. Juan Fran.
Just a brief comment in relation to what Dorleta explained, and very connected to the case that Laurence mentioned, which seems very interesting. It seems pretty evident that all the challenges that Dorleta has explained are adding an additional layer to the already complex world of corporate transactions. And I think it's safe to say that we should expect a new trend in the post-M&A disputes that could arise from these issues that we have discussed. For example, if the target company has undisclosed ESG liabilities, the acquiring company might face unexpected costs and legal issues. The rapidly evolving ESG regulations can create a new commitments, a new challenges, a new compliance requirements of the merged entity. And if the merged entity fails to comply with these rapidly evolving ESG regulations, the company can face sanctions, penalties, and even reputational damages, like you mentioned, and even differences in corporate cultures in terms of how do companies comply with these ESG regulations and issues can lead to conflicts and inefficiencies that will definitely impact the success of the merger and potentially lead to disputes. So there's a whole new host of issues that need to be taken into consideration when entering into a transaction, especially when acquiring a smaller company without the resources that sometimes are needed to put in place all the procedures and mechanisms to comply with ESG regulations.
And if I may add something, this is not only a multinational obligation. I mean, this is not only an obligation for companies dealing in, I don't know, 40 countries and through these CSRD and 3DDD directives. Smaller companies here in Spain are obliged by these ESG matters, and they do not have the resources to grant compliance with those matters which they are obliged with. So if you're dealing with one of these small companies in your supply chain, what can you do? I mean, how far do you have to go to grant compliance? And that's something pretty interesting, yeah.
Talking about supply chains, Juan Fran, disruptions, something which we talk about, we were talking about this in recent months, but obviously with the blackout of last week is more, a chatter. How do you think that disruptions in global supply chains these will affect, in particular, in arbitration cases? What type of challenges do you see from an economic and forensic perspective?
Well, thanks, Javier, and I should have thanked the whole team of the Open de Arbitraje for once again organizing this wonderful event. So it is widely recognized that global supply chain disruptions can result in delays and increased costs in non-performance of contractual obligations that are leading to a whole number of arbitration cases. And the thing is that global supply chain disruptions tend to accelerate the stranding of assets by increasing costs, by delaying projects, because they limit the access to raw materials, components needed to build energy infrastructures. And it is this concept of stranded assets that is particularly relevant in energy arbitration cases. And it's a common ground where not only disruptions in supply chains, but some other trends that we are observing in energy arbitration meet. Because in the context of the subject that we are discussing today, stranded assets are investments in infrastructure of, let's call it, non-green energy or non-green energy infrastructures that have lost value because of changes in market conditions. That one example could be disruptions in supply chain, but also changes in the regulatory environment and even technological advancements. So what are these trends that we are observing in our practice? In addition to the disruptions in global supply chains, we see that government policies aimed at phasing out certain sources of energy can render existing assets obsolete. In this case, investors are claiming that these policies have stranded the assets and leading to arbitration cases under different treaties. Probably the best known case is the plans announced by the Netherlands to phase out coal-fired power plants by 2030 to meet climate goals that led to arbitration claims by companies like RWE and Uniper, which argued that the phase-out violated their investment protections. But also the process of decommissioning certain assets can lead to disputes over who bears the financial burden of these stranded assets. On one hand, decommissioning fossil fuel assets often entails complex and quite costly activities that lead to disputes over environmental remediation, financial liabilities, contractual obligations, and bringing again the world of corporate transactions. Sometimes acquisition of these aging assets by usually smaller operators lead to disputes due to underestimated decommissioning liabilities. These disputes often revolve around regulatory compliance, again, environmental impact, financial responsibilities. But probably the most pervasive trend that we are observing is this clash between the transition into energy or green energy and honoring existing long-term contracts. And we're seeing that this clash between moving as fast as some policies want with existing contracts signed with generators that use fossil fuels is creating a significant source of arbitration cases. For example, investors are claiming that new regulations aimed at promoting renewable energy unfairly impact their investments or their expectations based on certain assumptions that they had when they signed the contracts. And these disputes often involve complex assessment or of economic damages, but also considering a balancing between public interest
Reputation.
and investor rights. And even within the criteria of public interest, actors in the energy sector have to balance climate change, consumer prices, and energy security.
Yeah.
And this last concept, for those of us who live in Spain, we were recently reminded of how energy
Vulnerable.
security, how fragile it is, and how important energy security is to maintaining a well-functioning society. So going back to our picture, actors in this sector are not only have to walk over a tightrope, but sometimes it feels like there's someone like shaking
Pulling it, yeah.
the rope, and some of the people throwing stones at them at the same time. So this balancing act is quite challenging for the actors in the sector.
I agree. And Laurence, do you think that the Russian conflict is pulling the rope of Europe in particular? I mean, how? And this is also related with what Juan Fran was saying. You know, disruptions in global supply chains. I mean, we've had a very big impact in our economies because of the Ukraine-Russian conflict. How does this link with what energy disputes?
Yes, another interesting aspect of what is happening mostly, or at least firstly, in the energy area, is probably in relation to after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia back in 2022. And after a number of sanctions have been enacted, in particular by European countries, Russia has put in place a number of countermeasures quite aggressively, which have given rise to dispute by foreign companies as a result of these countermeasures. Just a few words about these countermeasures. So the first countermeasure that were taken were put in place to address the widening deficit due to cost of war and to sanctions. And they were undertaken for strategic companies and companies from the energy and financial sectors. So that's interesting to see that that's, of course, the first sector impacted due to its major impact on the rest of Europe and also part of the world, and the wish to have a direct effect on that. And this measure have then been broadened. Basically, the first measure was that each sale of share you would do as a foreign investor would be basically requiring the approval of the Russian president. And then it has been broadened and more sophisticated, and against cases of any divestment from companies from unfriendly countries. And one example of that is a decree allowing Russia to place assets of unfriendly investors under external management from government. And as a result of that, you've had many examples of companies that have been put into this temporary management, which can only be ended by a decision of the Russian president. And we have three examples, which probably you've heard about of three energy companies, basically a Finland company called Fortum, a German company recently nationalized called Uniper, And the first company I would like to refer to was Wintershall. I'm not going to go into the detail of the cases because it's too long, but for each of those companies, basically the assets that were put into management were thermal power plants, wind and solar plants, oil fields, and so these companies basically were subject to the countermeasure of Russia. So they, under either BITs or ECT treaty, sent notice of dispute to the state, alleging that the situation, of course, of this external management taken over by Russia was equivalent to an expropriation. And I can't tell you the rest of the story because it is ongoing. But as an additional countermeasure by Russia, then as a reaction to the initiation of this arbitration, and also as a reaction to any kind of arbitration initiated by foreign investors or foreign companies under commercial, further to breach of a commercial contract against Russian companies, there was an anti-arbitration injunction have been ordered by Russian courts in order to stop the companies to bring arbitration against Russian state-owned Russian companies or Russia. Basically, this was made under a law voted by Russia that said that any arbitrations initiated against sanctioned companies was to be subject to the exclusive jurisdiction of the Russian courts. In addition to the measure of please stop arbitration, the court also ordered, if that anti-arbitration injunction was not complied with, payment of a fine equivalent in general to the amount of damages claimed in the arbitration. That's very, very, how can I say, persuasive. And last, a week ago, as a creativity that can arise from this kind of situation, is that the measure has been ordered against the opposing parties, I mean the claimant in the arbitration, but also against the arbitration institution, the council, the arbitrators.
Everybody.
Everybody. So I will leave that to you, to your reflection.
Just in case.
But just to see the number of legal tools that can be put in place in situation of conflict, and that are particularly targeting energy industries due to their major impact in the context of war and the sanction, is quite important, and it is only the beginning of this kind of dispute. So,
I would say that maybe as a final remark that it is very rare to see a dispute which does not have nowadays energy perspective. So everything related to Russia is energy related. The three cases you've talked about were energy plants. The disputes that will arise from the energy blackout we encountered last week are energy related, and every single big project in Spain and South America and North Africa are related to energy plants that you intervene, no, Juan? And obviously from an ESG perspective, I would say that every single company, small and big and medium, has to include all these matters. And I'm very happy to have heard from an in-house counsel that, because I fully agree, I think that domestic litigation courts are not ready to resolve these type of matters. We all know how these domestic litigation courts are overloaded with work, and this needs, I would say, soft skills and an extra knowledge that obviously judges do not have, and do not have time, to acquire, which is, a special point into consideration. If you all agree, I think we can leave it at this.
And we can clap
free
for
the
all these
audience.
people who have stayed
free
until the last one.
all the audience, on behalf of all the panel, thank you very much again. Thank you. I think we can go have dinner, supper. And once again, thank you very much. Thank you for staying for so long. Thank you for hearing us, and thank you for hearing us in English, which is an extra
Effort.
burden on
Yeah.
you. So thank you very much.
Thank you.